Hello, I'm Wendy Wilson, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Realizing Potential. Today we have in the studio a very noted and accomplished author, and he has some ties to Georgia, and we'll learn a little bit more about that. But I'm very elated to have him in the studio and to have an opportunity to speak with him as he makes his tour. I'll tell you a little bit later about who he's connected to as it relates to a person here at Albany State University, but it is my distinct honor to introduce you to, again, sir, how are you?
All right.
Very good, very good. Ibram Kendi, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to be
So you spoke with our students a little bit earlier about this phenomenal book, and I'm very excited to read it. But let's share with the viewers a little bit about your background as it relates to your academic pursuits, what institution you attended, and why did you select that major?
So I'm a very proud graduate of Florida A&M University, and I was born and raised in Queens, and we moved down to Virginia when I was in high school, and I ultimately ended up in Florida, at Florida A&M, and then I went on to Temple University where I got my PhD. And now I'm also a professor at the University of Florida.
Okay, very good. And what was your major at FAM, and then what did you do your dissertation on? I'm very curious.
So my major, actually, at both Florida A&M and for my doctorate, was African American Studies.
Okay.
And I also majored at FAMU in journalism. And so I ended up doing my dissertation on Black student activism in the late 60s, early 70s, really the Black student activism that to a large extent led to the diversification of higher education, to Black studies, to a number of different reforms and initiatives during that period.
Very good. I always ask this question. I'm always intrigued by individuals' majors in college. And so was there a pivotal moment that made you say, I want to go down this path, this discipline interests me?
It's interesting because initially, again, my focus was more in journalism and actually was more interested in sports journalism.
Okay.
And I think it was I did an internship at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and during that summer I was in the sports department, and I ended up sort of doing a bunch of research for a story on, I found a few Black kids in Atlanta who were really good in hockey. And many of these kids not only were some of the best in their age division in hockey, but they had also experienced racism on the ice.
Sure.
And so, I reported on and sort of did a lot of research for that story and got to know the families. And so this sort of intersection between sports and racial issues, I think that was the moment in which I began to realize that I was really interested in racial issues. And, that summer I got to meet a lot of professional athletes, and I thought that's what I sort of wanted, and it sort of got old really quickly. But the racial issues and the social issues did not get old. They seemed really exciting and important.
And always relevant and never ending, it appears.
Exactly.
Yes. So again, I have to ask, my mind is just saying, what's the pivotal moment? And so, of course, the experience with these students, and you're majoring specifically in the study of African American history, if you will, and race relations. What then led to this book, which is entitled Stamped from the Beginning? What is it that made you say it's time to start documenting and capturing, and just kind of tease the viewers, if you will, about the major topics or the subtopics in terms of race?
Sure. So you ended up writing, so typically you do a dissertation and that becomes your first book, and that was the same for me. So my first book was on Black student activism in the late 60s, early 70s. And it was really on what I call the Black campus movement. And students, Black students at the time, were sort of demanding and protesting for more Black students, more Black faculty at historically white campuses, also Black studies, Black cultural centers. A series of things that some of these students take for granted today.
Sure.
These students put their lives on the line for. But then I wanted to write a second book on the origin of Black studies, and specifically sort of show the ways in which students were involved. And I also wanted to sort of show the scientific racism that these students felt they were encountering in the 60s, which is why they demanded something completely new, which they called Black Studies. You know, what history wouldn't do it for, psychology, sociology, we need something completely new, which they called African American Studies. And so as I started to study the history of scientific racism, I realized that a group of people that in the book I call assimilationists were written out of this history. These are people who believe that the racial groups are biologically equal, but that in every other way, Black people are inferior. So the racial groups are genetically equal, but Black skin is uglier than white skin. African American culture is pathological. Black people are lazy. Africa is barbaric. But since we're biologically equal, these assimilationists have spent the course of American history trying to civilize and develop Black people, believing that Black people could be civilized and developed. And they, for a long time, were arguing against a group in the book I call segregationists, who were saying that no, Black people cannot be civilized and developed. They're permanently inferior. So you had one group saying they're permanently inferior, another group saying they're temporarily inferior. Both groups are saying they are inferior. And so the book chronicles, stamped from the beginning, chronicles this debate between these two groups of racist ideas. And then a third group in the book that I call anti-racist challenged them both in saying, no, you know what, Black people are equal. Black people are in every way equal. Now, that's not to say that Black people look the same or act the same, but that is to say that you can have difference and simultaneously be on the same level.
Identify just a few. You don't have to share all of them because, again, we want the readers to, or the viewers to go out and purchase the book. Some of the historical figures that they can find within the text.
So the book is, I wanted to write the book to be as accessible as possible for as many readers as possible. And so that's why it's more of a chronological narrative. It really reads like a story. And I have major characters, and each section, there's 5 sections, has a major character. And to give an example of an assimilationist, William Lloyd Garrison, who's the 3rd major character in the book, was also probably the most famous white male abolitionist. And he believed that slavery had literally made Black people into brutes. And so he would basically speak to white audience, look how horrible slavery it is. These people are literally brutes. Essentially means they're subhuman. And so when people who were enslaved were like, no, actually, we're just as human as the people who are enslaving us, of course he did not agree. But then he still was very well-meaning, right? He was an abolitionist. He was trying to end slavery. And so I think that's sort of an indication of somebody who has really been written out of the history of racism because they were well-meaning. And so the book, I think one of the sort of contributions of the book is that you've had a lot of very well-meaning people who still look upon Black people as inferior.
Wow. The whole, and I'd like for you to, I'm processing, and that's why I use the word wow, because one of the things that continues to intrigue me, particularly with young people, and so I don't know if we have done a disservice to them in terms of educating them on race relations historically, the immediate past, and what could potentially avail if we are not conscious or aware of our reality or our past. And I come across so many that are just absolutely perplexed because when you hear an incident that may arise to a national or international level as it relates to the ill treatment of African Americans in these United States, there is always that quizzical look. I don't quite understand, why are they acting this way? And then when you start enlightening them a little bit on on what has happened, it is if you have just dropped from the sky. That it's a huge chasm and disconnect. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you do? And I'm sure you did that earlier today. What do you do to educate our young people so that disconnect does not remain and they don't then continue to embrace this falsehood as it relates to race relations?
Well, that's one of the things that I hope comes out through people reading Stamped from the beginning. And what we should recognize, and I think it's a very difficult thing to say, but the reality is that our young people are literally taught racist ideas. Sometimes by their parents, many times by their schools, certainly by their media. And what I mean by that is we have racial inequalities in our society, racial disparities.
Sure.
That's not a surprise to anybody. For instance, the last 50 years, the black unemployment rate has been twice as high as the white unemployment rate. There's only two explanations for why the black unemployment rate has consistently been twice as high as the white unemployment rate. Either there's something wrong with black people, or there's something wrong with society. And what racist ideas say is there's something wrong with black people. Black people are lazier than white workers. Black people are less qualified than white workers. Black people don't really want to work. They just want to take advantage of welfare. Even though there's no data, there's no empirical studies that actually show that, that's what people have been taught by racist ideas. When in reality, the reason for that disparity is racial and job discrimination.
Sure.
And so children are typically taught the simple way out, which is if black workers don't have as many jobs, there must be something wrong with black workers, which is a very easy and logical, a seemingly logical response when recognizing the complex nature of racial discrimination in the job market is a lot more difficult for parents to understand, let alone to teach to their children.
Sure. So it becomes easy to then grasp what is in your immediate view,
Exactly.
or what is the media, we'll use them as an example, what they may bombard you with or feed you with. So I have this conversation with my kids. I get concerned about, or stay on them about the constant feeding of social media and what it is that you are pulling into your being. So for every, Twitter, you may see, or the hip hop you may see, you need to counter that. So I need some Dr. John Henry Clark or Dr. Ben, or I need you, or Michael Eric Dyson, and now Ibram Kendi to help you to counter what is, again, just, it's almost as if you can bathe in it on a daily basis. And so you then start unconsciously buying into that.
And one of the ways I think we can counter these regular images, sometimes negative images about black people in the media, is for us to not generalize individual negativity.
Sure.
And so in other words, so just like going back to the discussion about the unemployment rate. So we each probably know a black person who is unemployed who's also lazy. What we do is we generalize that to all unemployed black people,
Sure.
when that's only one individual.
Right.
On the same token, when we see a black person on TV, an individual acting negatively, we generalize that to say that's how black people are. And it's racist ideas that have long taught us to do that. Because when we see a white person, an individual white person acting negatively, we say that individual white person, there's something wrong with them. And so I think I'm not as concerned about the regular flow of negative images as much as I'm concerned with how people process those negative images by generalizing those individual characters as representative of black people when they're certainly not.
Absolutely. And then it also becomes, I think we, this crosses racial spectrums as well, tend to wait for someone else to educate us, to provide us with knowledge,
Yes.
to critically think for us. And it happens in churches, it happens in schools, and we've been in that danger zone for quite some time. Some races suffer more than others because of that. And so you must be intentional with your own educational attainment and not solely rely on what the instructor is providing you or offering you,
Yes.
but be able to, again, critically think and research, compare and contrast.
Oh, I totally agree. And I actually earlier today when I was speaking to Albany State students and faculty, I suggested that the way we should imagine an intelligent person is not by how much they know, but how much of a desire they have to know. And so those people who, to me, have the greatest desires to seek out knowledge,
Sure.
Whether it's in books, whether it's in knowledgeable people, those are the people who, to me, are the most intelligent.
Absolutely. You remind me, I was commenting last week, as I'm sure you were devastated at the loss of Gwen Ifill. And that has been always my observation of her, is that she carries her intelligence, or carried her intelligence, with ease and poise. It was very natural. And so that would then ignite in others to do the same.
Yes.
Yeah. So we hope that that ripples
Yes.
across.
Yes, yeah, that was a terrible loss.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely it was. I am very curious, what book and author has most impacted your life?
There's so many books.
Yes.
I would probably have to say the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Okay, okay.
And I think because, speaking back to what we were just talking about, of this desire to know, typically people who have a tremendous desire to know are also willing to change.
Sure.
And to self-criticize and to evolve. And I think the beauty of the autobiography of Malcolm X is we watch somebody who goes from being known as Satan to being known as Malcolm X, right? This long evolution in which he's constantly criticizing himself and constantly searching out to become a better person. And to me, those types of people, and we've had many of those people in American history and African American history, are the people who most inspire me.
Okay, very good, very good. Another book, and I'm going to get to the biggest part, because I know I will have to speak with your mother-in-law if I don't, and I'm going to say last. But is there another book inside that or books that will follow this, or a totally different genre or discipline that you are interested in?
So I'm actually thinking, Stamped from the Beginning sort of changes the way we think about racist ideas in America. And so I actually found that our common conception that ignorance and hate is what leads to racist ideas, and then the people who have these racist ideas create racist policies, that's actually quite ahistorical. And so when we constantly say that person who's producing that racist idea is ignorant and hateful, what I actually found through studying their motives, that these major powerful producers were producing these ideas to justify existing racist policies, to normalize racial inequities, which are the result of racist policies. And why were they so invested in racist policies? Because typically these policies benefited them. Slavery benefited slaveholders financially.
Absolutely.
And therefore they wanted racist ideas to be produced so that people could believe black people should be enslaved.
Sure.
And so ultimately I traveled around the country urging people that if we want to get rid of racist ideas, we have to first get rid of racist policies. And so I'm thinking about writing a history of racist policies.
Well, I look forward to that piece. I'm concerned that you may have a lot of information
Yes.
as a result of the election results for that book. I'm going to allow you to, or ask you to share with the viewers, this obviously phenomenal piece. And the reason I say that is because you received an award as a result of it. So please share with our viewers what that award is and what it took to get to that point, meaning they just don't go out and say, hey, I think we want you to get this award. There is a process, so educate our viewers.
So a few days ago I was in New York and I learned that Stamped from the Beginning won the National Book Award for nonfiction. And fortunately my publisher, Nation Books, nominated it for this National Book Award.
Okay.
And it became part of the long list of 10 books, and then it became a finalist. And then the finalists, we were brought to New York, and it was almost like the Academy Awards of books. And I was able to win the award. And so I was, of course, tremendously happy and honored that I won this award, and that it will cause more people to seriously consider the history of racism in our country.
Certainly. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. You certainly should be extremely proud, as I'm sure your family, and I know one particular person certainly is that I know, and for our viewers who are, I'm sure, wondering who does she keep talking about, and that would be the Miss Neota Tucker,
Yes.
who provided great legal counsel and a longtime instructor here at Albany State University. So great family connection.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's why I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, yes.
You know, a few days after winning this award, I mean, Neota Tucker and my wife is Ibram Kendi, who of course is her daughter, and her father, B.T. Edmonds, you know, have for a long time established roots in Albany, and we've seen their flowers bloom,
Indeed.
you know, all over this community, and I'd like to think that I may be one of those flowers. And so it's truly an honor to be here
Absolutely.
and to bring this award back here.
Oh, indeed. We're honored to have you. There's a book signing later on this evening, and
Yes.
so this of course won't air prior to that time, but is there a means in terms of our viewers being able to purchase this book after the fact, after the book signing, and after you, I'm sure, start your major tour of the country with this?
Yeah, so it's available online. You know, if you go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or your local independent bookstore, it's available. Stamped from the beginning. You can just Google "Stamped from the Beginning" and find a number of different places. So wherever books are sold, typically "Stamped from the Beginning" is being sold.
Outstanding, outstanding. Well, I look forward to purchasing it and
Thank
reading
you.
it. Congratulations again, and I applaud you on so many different levels. You provide an exemplary example of it just takes one person to be courageous enough to speak truth.
Yes.
And a lot of us will hold on to that. We see it. It's in our everyday existence, but to step forward and to make it known and declare that we need to do something about this individually and collectively. And this is clearly an this. So again, I'm very excited to read it, and honored to meet you, and elated that you took the time out of your schedule to join us here on the show today. I wish you continued success.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to come and talk
My
to
pleasure.
you. You know, it's been fun.
My pleasure. Know that you're always welcome back.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of Realizing Potential. I'm Wendy Wilson, and I will see you next time.